This is FBG Jen.
And FBG Kristen.
And I'm FBG Margot, host and producer. You're listening to the podcast that will help you keep a lid on the junk in the trunk and inspire you to live a happy and confident life.
Each episode, we chat with motivational experts and celebs and share our own candid adventures in being healthy.
If you're looking for a podcast that's equal parts hilarious and enlightening, well then welcome to the Fit Bottomed Girls podcast.
Life is too short to waste time on things that just aren't important. And you weren't put here to worry about your weight or the number on the scale. If you're ready to break free from all that diet culture BS, if you're ready to take your power back, check out fitbottomgirls.com/coaching to learn more about our signature online program, Love Your Body, Love Your Life. Welcome back to the Fit Bottom Girls podcast. This is FBG Margot, and on the line today, we have FBG Jen.
Hey.
And we have FBG Kristen.
Hi, guys.
And guys, we have Ben Bergeron on the show today. Woohoo!
Woo!
All right, so Ben is a very well-known CrossFit coach, and he owns a CrossFit box as well, a gym. And I found this conversation to be so fascinating and so interesting because he does coach some of the top CrossFit athletes, which is so interesting to kind of get a little backstory as to how he trains them and coaches them mentally and physically. And I don't know, I find the whole the people who do CrossFit, I find just fascinating at the elite level to see what they can do and how hard they can push themselves, and it's crazy. And with the CrossFit Games coming up, we thought that this interview would be really, really timely. But whether or not you're do CrossFit or interested in CrossFit or watch it on TV, this interview just has a whole lot in it. And he had some really interesting takes on goal setting and he calls it WHOOPIE, which I thought
He does call it WHOOPIE.
It is WHOOPIE.
Like a different twist on SMART goals.
Yeah, and he goes into that. He explains what it is and gives really nice tangible examples of what each of those steps looks like. So I remember after we finished this interview that I was kind of thinking through some of the goals that I've had in mind and trying to apply this a little bit more to what I want to do. And it does change the way it changed the way I looked at things. So I think that you guys are going to be, so even if you're not CrossFit-y, there's still a lot of value in this. He is a smart, interesting dude.
I like how we use CrossFit as an adjective,
Yes.
CrossFit-y. Are you kind of CrossFit-y or full-on CrossFit-y or not
Yeah.
CrossFit-y at all? I also was thinking some about his philosophy on goals, and it kind of in some ways, see if you agree with this, falls into almost kind of law of attraction type stuff with the focus on feeling and hopes and intentions and things like that. I got there's kind of a hippy-dippy vibe to it, even though he's not hippy-dippy at all, I don't think.
Yeah, I can see that. That's an interesting take.
Yeah, I don't know. I thought about it a lot.
He's also really, really close to his wife, and she is a blogger as well. We mentioned her on the show, and he's just a really nice guy. And one of the things I really appreciate him, because you all know, we all have friends that are just super into CrossFit and, post the pictures of the wads and all that kind of stuff. And one thing I don't like about CrossFit is this fetishizing of how hard it is. And it's so hard that you're going to puke, and I hate that. I just feel like that's the story that's brought up. And Ben is no, that's not okay. He explains what it is to work intensely and safely for you. And I love that.
Yeah, it was very inclusive.
Yes.
For as high of a level that he trains athletes.
Oh, yeah.
It was very much anyone could come into his gym and he could work with anyone, which was really, really cool.
And you know what else is really cool?
What?
Stickers. We have Fit Bottom Girls stickers, and they are adorable. So if you guys are interested, send us an email, podcast@fitbottomgirls.com, and we will send a couple of them to you in the mail. Be sure to follow us on all the social media. It's either Fit Bottom Girls or Fit Bottom Girl, depending on the platform. Wherever you get, by the way, wherever you get your podcast, please be sure to subscribe. That way you'll never miss an episode. But if you leave a 5-star review in Apple Podcasts / iTunes, we will read it on the air. So guys, let's get ready with Ben. Why don't we?
Let's do it.
Do it.
Do it.
Diets and restrictions don't work. After years of experience in our own lives and with thousands of readers, listeners, and followers, we know that the information and formula in our signature online program, Love Your Body, Love Your Life, does. And by listening to this podcast, you can save 20% when you use the code FBG Podcast. So sign up and save at fitbottomgirls.com/coaching. Ben Bergeron trained some of the world's fittest athletes. A former Ironman triathlete turned CrossFit Games competitor, Ben has coached athletes to 6 world championships. As coach to the reigning fittest man and fittest woman on earth, he is considered one of the top coaches in the sport of CrossFit. He founded CrossFit New England in 2007, where he coaches regular people on their quest to improve their fitness, health, and approach to life beyond the gym. He currently programs for tens of thousands of competitive athletes on both CompTrain and CompTrain Masters and shares best practices for gym owners and coaches through seminars and events around the world. Welcome to the show, Ben.
Thank you.
Hello, and this is FBG Margot on the line today. We have FBG Jen.
Hello.
And we have FBG Kristen.
Hey.
And Ben, I'm going to ask you the first question. Can you please start just by telling us how you got involved with CrossFit and how it has changed over the years?
So, happy to. I got involved in CrossFit because I was a personal trainer before that. Kind of found it organically way back in the day, around 2005, 2006. But my kind of backstory before becoming a trainer was I was doing that kind of the normal finance business stuff that, I was kind of destined to do. Went to school for business and kind of doing corporate finance type stuff and, doing the normal 9 to 5, wearing the nice clothes and sitting in the cubicle and had no really impetus to change anything in my life, even though I wasn't kind of fulfilled or happy until 9/11 happened. And when 9/11 happened, I was working in I knew people that were on those planes, and it really kind of shook me to my core and forced me to really take a deep, hard look at what I was doing in my life. And I realized that I did not want to go through the next, decades living this kind of like going through the motions and being a trained monkey pushing buttons on a keyboard. I wanted more connection. I wanted more fulfillment. I wanted more meaning and impact in my life. And I moved out to Wyoming to try and get my life together and figure out what I wanted to do with it. And I eventually settled on becoming a trainer. I thought, it's something I was passionate about anyway. I was doing triathlons at the time. And I came back home and started training people in their homes. And I started training people in Globo gyms. And then I became a strength conditioning coach. And while I was doing that strength conditioning stuff, that's when I fell into CrossFit and started doing it with my members, started doing it with myself. I felt like I got in better shape doing 3 months of CrossFit than I had doing 3 years of Ironman training. And kind of fell in love with the community and the results. And fast forward, 12 years later, and here we are.
Wow. So was it a pretty natural progression then from you going going from a personal trainer to then being, more on the coaching side and even more of an in-depth relationship with athletes and people?
Yeah, so I did the normal personal training thing that you'd see in a health club or a normal gym, and then I got involved in more like the athlete side of stuff, and I was a strength conditioning coach at one of the elite prep schools in New England, working with the athletes there. And while I was there, I found out about CrossFit and started working with my athletes doing that. And it was just there was no big one aha moment or one big huge leap. It was very kind of like slow and feel it out. I started doing it with my athletes, and then some of my athletes' parents started coming in. I started working with them, and we built up a little following at the school I was working at. And then from there, found a location that we could open up and do this thing full time.
So I'm curious. I'm the resident triathlete around here. So I would love to know a little bit. How does your experience, your Ironman past and all of that, is there anything that you take from that helps you be a better or a different type of coach in CrossFit, or are they just so different that it really doesn't tie in?
I think every experience that you have, you can tie back in some way into some other endeavor, even if it's not perfectly paralleled lines. And while CrossFit certainly is its own sport separate from triathlon, the fact that I had that endurance background has helped me a ton, especially as our sport has evolved. And our sport started off just as, kind of like what people probably interpret CrossFit to be, which is, like gymnastics type stuff and barbells. But it got into, we row marathons. They've done triathlons in the competitions. We do biking, running, swimming. So that skill set and that kind of training approach and knowing how to get people to stretch out their endurance a little bit has helped me out in massive ways that I think it's given me an edge on some other people in the field that have only come up through the sport of CrossFit.
You have a post on your blog about the difference between a good coach and a great one. Can you go into that a little bit here today?
I think there's a lot of differences between good coaches and great coaches. I think that what most people look at with coaching is kind of like the X's and O's of the sport or whatever the specific thing is that they're working on. It's about the skill set. It's about positions. It's about getting people to refine their technique. But to me, that's almost the easy part. I think the harder part, and the thing that really makes great coaches great, is the ability to connect with the athletes and connect with people on a one-on-one basis. And to me, coaching is nothing more than any other relationship you'd have, whether it's with your spouse or a friend or a teacher, a mentor, a student, or anybody else. All relationships are just built on trust. So if you can put yourself in a position, I think that a lot of trust is built off of, people say it's seeing it from other people's points of view. And the big word that we're kind of using that being thrown around a lot is understanding the difference between sympathy and empathy. And I think that a lot of people the saying is treat people the golden rule, right? Which is treat people as you want to be treated. But I actually think that's a pretty terrible rule because most people don't want to be treated the way you want to be treated. They want to be treated the way they want to be treated. You can understand how those individuals want to be, do they respond to a little kick in the pants? Do they want an arm around their shoulder? Do they want to be whispered to? Do they want to be listened to? And to me, the deeper side of coaching, the great coaches, and I'm certainly working on it, are the ones that can kind of get past that hard outer layer and get to the softer, gooier middle, where you really can, explore kind of like what really makes people tick. And if you find that, then all the other stuff, the points of performance and the positions and the skills and everything else kind of fall into place.
So I've got to ask, what are your methods for determining what it is a person needs or what it is that they want? Like, are there certain questions that you ask when you take an athlete in, or is it something that you look for as you're beginning to work together?
I think if there was a really good answer to that, coaching relationships would be easy. You should ask the right questions, but
yeah, every
situation is so unique and every individual is unique. So, I mean, there's some easy ones that I let my athletes know, which is every day when we start, I'm going to ask, how are you feeling? And your answer cannot be good. So, because that's what everyone says. Like, how are you feeling today? And they're like, pretty good. Well, that doesn't tell me anything. So what we do is we kind of break it down into some different categories and we say, so how are you feeling? And they'll say pretty good. And I'll look at them and they'll go, right. Okay. And I'll say, so where's your energy level today? And then on a scale of 1 to 10, and then tell me why. What's your muscle soreness like on a scale of 1 to 10? Tell me why. How eager and excited are you to train today? Tell me on a scale of 1 to 10 and why. And then from there, that at least gives me some metrics, and whether it's all obviously wishy-washy and self-reported and ambiguous, but at least it gets the conversation going. The idea is, I think that if people, what I try to do, and this is my take on coaching, I know it's not everybody's, but my take is working from the inside out, building the character first and understanding, building trust. And if I can, with my athletes, get them to feel like I have their best interest at heart. And the way to do that is to listen to them and not for me to have like a response or an answer to everything. And when they're done talking, I'm not going to have an immediate response. I want to have another question I can follow up with something, and try not to dig into too hard on like the whys, because those become like accusational. Like, why do you feel like that? Why did you do that? Why did you, why are you late to training? Instead of thinking about things like the hows and the what, like what could we do different to get you to training on time? Like, how can I be helpful to change this in the future? And kind of letting them know that we're on the same side, trying to find solutions and betterment together. And, it starts basically with that trust factor. And I really think that building trust is, if it's not 80 or 90%, it's definitely the majority of all relationships.
So in your bio, you talk about the mindset of a champion being, pretty rare, but something that every one of us is capable of. Can you talk a little bit more about that, how you develop that in both your, competitive athletes and then just the everyday people you have come into your box?
So the way I develop and work with athletes is this kind of bottom-up model, which is, the top, which most people and most coaches and athletes are focusing on, is like game day strategy. So if we are basketball players, are we going to play zone, or are we going to play man-to-man? Are we going to do a pick and roll offense, or are we going to do a dribble drive? And then from there, the next thing they work on is like skill sets. Let's get better at dribbling, passing, defense, and shooting. And that's like what the majority of what teams and individual athletes focus on. And that's certainly what we do as well. But to me, more important than that is the process. And the process is figuring out all of the variables and all of the controllables we should be focusing on that can move the needle for us as an athlete. And it really stems down to about 5 things, which is your training, your recovery, your nutrition, your sleep, and then your mindset, which is that last one that you just alluded to. The mindset one is probably the biggest because it has the most carryover to all the others. And we talk about, mental toughness, but it goes beyond that. It goes into patience. It goes to grit and fortitude. It goes into positivity. And if there's one kind of like defining characteristic that overarches all of the other ones, mental toughness is not necessarily what people think it is. It's not this like, I can withstand pain. I can, push the last 800 meters of the marathon, even though my legs are gone. To me, like, mental toughness is doing the right thing regardless of what's going on around you. And if we were to take a shortcut and a one kind of like thing to focus on for our lives of what that looks like, it's simply don't complain. It's never whine, never complain, and never make excuses. And if you eliminate those things, because all those things are doing, all that happens when you're complaining is you're taking your eyes off of the things that you have control over, and you're putting them on other things. It's cold outside. I'm tired. Man, this traffic sucks. I wish my kid wasn't up all night crying. Like, when you think about all those things, you're losing sight of the things that you do have control over. And if we focus on things you have control over, you can influence them, move yourself better, and put yourself in a better position to be even more productive and be in a better place tomorrow, as opposed to the woe is me, I feel sorry for myself, which are, no matter how much you focus on the weather, the traffic, or your kid crying last night, those things are done and they're not going to be able to change them. So I really try and get my athletes the mindset of a champion. Starts with this idea of figure out what it is we can control. And the exercise I bring my athletes through is literally, let's talk about everything. We'll do this exercise. We grab a whiteboard and what's everything that we could possibly talk about this season. We could talk about the weather. We could talk about what workouts might pop up. We could talk about who we have to compete against. We have to talk about, is it going to be 90 degrees when we're competing, or is it going to be cold and rainy? And let's figure out and categorize them. Is these things that we should be focusing on, or are these things that we should just, when they happen, just recognize that they're happening and let them roll off our shoulders? If we can do that, we are starting to develop the mindset of a champion.
On your podcast, Chasing Excellence, I really liked this. You talked about the mistaken belief that if you throw up during every workout, then you're really working hard. And especially with CrossFit, it's been fetishized, like that whole thing of, oh man, I worked out so hard, I puked every day. It's like, can you please talk about why that is not ideal for most people and what high intensity really means?
In CrossFit, I love that we're talking about this because it's probably the most misunderstood thing about CrossFit is people see the CrossFit Games or they see, people with these home videos posted on YouTube, or they hear the stories of people working out so hard that they're throwing up, or they work out so hard that they're so sore they can't, get off the toilet the next day, and they can't go. They have to take 6 days from work because they're so sore. It's a misrepresentation of what it is that we operate by. We operate by a threefold principle, which is mechanics, consistency, then and only then relatively high intensity, which means we want to work on the mechanics first. We want to get you moving well first. We want to get you to move appropriately. So it's not about just kind of like, throwing caution in the wind and see how fast we can do this thing. Then it's consistency. We want you doing this 4, 5, 6 days a week. And we want you to be able to move well, not only when coach is watching you, but when we're not watching you as well. Then we'll layer in this intensity level, which is simply relatively high intensity. What that means is it's working out at a level that causes it's higher than you're used to going. And that doesn't mean laying on the floor after in a puddle of your own fluids. It doesn't need to be that. It's just working out to a little bit where you're like, whoo, that was a good workout. If you do that, you're forcing your body to adapt. You're forcing an adaptation that will cause you to be better, fitter, stronger, fitter, leaner, whatever it is tomorrow. We want to exercise at our psychological and physical tolerances. So if you go to a gym and the coach is yelling at you like, one more rep, go, 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 and you hate that, that's exceeding your psychological tolerances. That's not what we want to, that's not the approach. And similar, if you go and do it by yourself, but you work out so hard that you're puking at the end, you've exceeded your physiological tolerances. Like, that's not the way to get the best response out of this thing. CrossFit is constantly varied, functional movements performed at relatively high intensity, not maximal intensity. So relative is relative to you. So you are probably fitter than your grandmother. So your intensity level will be higher, but you're probably not as fit as the people that win the CrossFit Games. So your intensity level will be lower. It's also relatively a high intensity, not maximal. You don't need to go to the point where you can't see straight and it takes you 10 minutes to get off the floor at the end of your workouts. You just have to work hard. And working hard is different from day to day. Some days you have a little bit more and you're willing to give a little more. Other days you don't and you shouldn't.
So with the CrossFit Games, always changing things up, it's always a new thing. I know you talked about this a little bit when you're talking about your past as an Ironman. How do you coach for that? How do you train for anything under the sun?
We basically take because you're exactly right. When we go to the CrossFit Games, we don't know what we're going to be tested on. We don't know if we're going to be swimming, biking, running, rowing, lifting weights, climbing mountains, doing pull-ups, doing obstacle courses. We don't know what the test is going to be. So in order to train for that, we try and train for everything. Now it's an impossibility. So what we try to do is we try and take the things with the greatest carryover effect. So we know that there are certain movements in exercise that give you a bigger physiological adaptation than others. So you get more bang for your buck from doing constantly varied functional movements performed at relatively high intensity than you do always doing Pilates. Like it's the thing that we figured out. Like that's going to carry over to if you only do Pilates and they ask you to deadlift, 400 pounds, you're going to be in a tough spot. If you only deadlift 400 pounds and then they ask you to hike a mountain, which we've done, hike 7 miles through the mountains, which they've had to do, you're going to be in trouble there. So we try and find the things that have the biggest carryover effect. And then if there's something that kind of shows up in the past, we're going to bring that into our repertoire. So like paddle boarding, paddling has shown up, obviously swimming, all things, the normal things that have shown up. But obstacle courses are things that we do now. So you kind of look at the past tests. Anything that's been in the past test, we want to be ready for. like peg boards and, muscle ups and gymnastic-y type stuff, walking on your hands over obstacles. But the majority of our training lies in these kind of like really foundational strength and conditioning movements and routines.
I would love to pick your brain a little bit on like goal setting and expectation setting, because, even if you are able to get every single one of your athletes really, truly mentally tough, the fact is that, people do have different physical limitations.
Mm-hmm.
So how do you help your athletes set challenging goals that are still achievable for them? And kind of along with that, I'm curious if you have any tips for people who maybe don't have a coach that's quite as insightful as you, if there are ways that they can, set those for themselves.
So goals are a tricky one. I would like to say I'm a very goal-oriented person. And, as I learned about, setting SMART goals, specific, measurable, attainable, relevant, time-bound, you get a little more excited, you get a little more, they get a little stickier. But the truth is, I don't really believe in goals. I just think that goals are not the differentiator. So if you talked to 100 people and all 100 of those people had the goal of losing 15 pounds over the next 6 months, the people that achieve the goal and the people that don't, the goal is not the differentiator. So it's not about making better goals, which is what when I first came up through coaching, that's what my impression was. Like, okay, we have to be better at making better goals. And that's why I got so excited about SMART goals, because that made sense to me. It's like, the goal cannot be to get in shape. It's got to be to lose 10 pounds. It can't be to lose 10 pounds. It's got to be by a certain date. And now we're getting somewhere. The way I look at goals now is more of, so it's a little bit different of an acronym. Instead of SMART, it's WHOOPIE, WHOOPI. And this is a little bit more, it kind of refines things a little bit more. I'm going to go through this. This could be a huge discussion, but I'll go through it really quickly. The WH is the wish and the hope. That's essentially the goal. I want to get in better shape. Okay. Then from there, it is, what is the objective, the specific objective? And we're still kind of in that SMART world. It's like, it's not getting in better shape. It's that I want to run a marathon in under 4 hours. I want to lose 30 pounds. Okay. But then that can't be enough. So then what's the second O? And the second O is the obstacles. And what that means is, what are the things that are going to get in your way? Like, what are the things that are going to list everything that could set you off? Like, if your goal is that you want to run a marathon, well, what could knock you off your track? Well, you know that you have to be the best man in your brother's wedding, and that's, a weekend before 2 weekends before the marathon, so you might not be able to train that weekend. And you live in the Northeast, so it's going to snow, and you work a full-time job, and you have a family, so you have very limited time. So now you set up all of these things. It's basically the opposite of what everyone else does, which they wish and hope and wish and hope and wish and hope. It's the opposite of like, what are all the things that can go wrong? And then from there, you set up a plan. And the plan is, here's what I need to do. It's that I'm going to run. I know I need to run. If I'm going to do the marathon, I'm going to run 4 days a week, and I'm going to log in 20 miles a week or whatever it ends up being. And then from there, the next part is the WHOOP. Now we have I. And the I is the one that I believe is the most important. It's where you identify yourself as the type of person that does this. And when the bad thing happens that throws you off track, you stick to your plan because you say, I am the type of person that gets up at 5 a.m. every morning and goes running regardless of how cold it is outside. And when you can internalize that, when you can say that with conviction, I am the type of person that even if my brother is getting married, I'm going to get up at 3 in the morning to make sure I get this run in. Then all of a sudden it becomes something a little more powerful and more meaning because you're putting your identity tied to the goal. And that's a whole different place than I want to lose 10 pounds by September 1st. Now, if I am the type of person that does not eat junk food, I am the type of person that has salad for every lunch and dinner. I am the type of person that says no to the cookies at the office. I am the type of person that while everyone else is eating from the bread basket at dinner, I say no. And then from there, WHOOPIE, the last E is talk is cheap. It's not what we talk about, it's what we tolerate. So the last E is you have to execute on it. And if we don't execute on it, then it's again when this loop where everyone else is with goals, which is they just wish and hope and talk. And here's the trouble with it. When we talk about goals, your body actually, like subconsciously, it's the reason we like to talk about them. You actually get a dopamine and you get a little hormonal response that like you actually feel like you're achieving the goals. If I talk about like I'm going to run a marathon. As I'm doing that, I'm feeling good. Your body is actually like giving you little bits of credit and making you feel good about talking about it. But we have not yet done anything yet to move us any steps closer to that. So we have to execute on it. It's not what we talk about, it's what we tolerate. We have to tolerate action. It's the only thing that moves us towards our goals. So it's not about goals or, they're a little bit more layered, I think, than just setting goals or setting good goals. You have to basically like figure out what could go wrong and then tie your identity to them and then truly execute on the plan.
You are a strong proponent of having recovery time. What does that mean to you, and how much recovery is necessary for, let's say, the average athlete versus a pro?
I guess it kind of depends on what we're talking about with an average athlete. A person that's trying to, go for a couple-mile run every morning and maybe they go to the gym once or twice a week. For those type of people, the recovery is not a huge deal. It's, as long as they're getting their sleep and they're eating well and they're lowering their stress levels throughout the day and they have the right mindset, they don't need to be spending an extra, half hour, foam rolling, getting massages, go to get ART, getting, cryo tanks and deprivation tanks and all that stuff. But as you become more and more elite, the margins of advantage get slimmer and slimmer and slimmer. So if we can get a 0.5% better, we would sacrifice a lot for 0.5%. It's also as you take on more and more and more, you're putting more stress, wear and tear on your body, the recovery becomes more and more important. So if you're a normal everyday gym goer, which is going to the gym or taking a CrossFit class or going to spin 4 or 5 days a week for 45 minutes to an hour, recovery is not going to play a huge part in your overall health and wellness. But if you are trying to basically like push the potentials of you as a human being from a physiological standpoint, then, if you're working out like my elite athletes, the ones that are working out being the best in the world, train for 5 to 8 hours a day in the gym. That's really important for them to do everything that they possibly can to recover between training sessions, because at that point, it's he or she who recovers fastest and best actually wins, because they can come back and have a more quality, bigger training session than their competitors. If you do that over 12 months, you end up at a vastly different place than the other person. So what we look for our elite athletes is, it becomes very important, is, anywhere from an hour to 3 hours of recovery a day. And that's all sorts of different tips, tricks, and tools, anything from the cheap person's massage, which is like a foam roller, to stretching, to meditation, to an Epsom salt bath, to contrast, whether it's showers or tubs, to actual massage therapy, ART, chiropractors, to deprivation tanks. We kind of muscular stim units that our athletes fly with and travel with. And we have like Normatec systems, which are these like big boots that go all the way up your thigh that contract and kind of push blood through your body. So, it's kind of the spectrum of where we are on our, athletic journey and what our, back to the goals, but the goals of what we're trying to accomplish, that kind of plays the biggest role in how much recovery we want to be focusing on.
Wow. So who are you working with right now on the elite side? And is there anyone, I guess, new that we should all keep our eyeballs on for this year's games?
So on the CrossFit side of things, I have 3 athletes I work with on a very personal daily basis. Katrin David Stoddard, who's won the CrossFit Games twice. She's in my gym every day, and I work with her for hours a day. I have 2 other elite individuals, Brooke Wells, who lives in Oklahoma. She's finished in the top 10 a few times. She's certainly a person to watch. She's doing phenomenal in training this year. And then Cole Sager, who lives in Washington State. And he's also been a top 10 games athlete for a number of years. And then my coaching staff is working with a few others as well. And probably the top one of those to keep your eyes on is Amanda Barnhart, who was a rookie last year at the CrossFit Games, but she came in first place in one of the events there, and is turning herself into a well-rounded athlete this year, and she should do phenomenal. She's in, I think, 4th or 5th place in the world in the CrossFit Open right now, so she's definitely an athlete to watch.
Well, we've talked a lot about your athletes now and about your coaching, but could you tell us a little bit about your own fitness routine and what your recovery looks like, and how, maybe how that's changed over the years, or maybe it hasn't?
Certainly has, yeah. So I used to, as I kind of said, I used to be like, put a lot of time into my own training. When you're an Iron, trying to compete for Ironman, it's 25 hours a week of training. I am now not in that place at all. Family, business, coach, and all the rest. I get up at 5:25 every morning, and I work out from 6:15 to 8:15 every morning. I take the class at my gym, the 6:30 class, with all my members and led by one of our coaches. And then after that, I do another 45 minutes or so of additional stuff, but it's not straight through for those 2 hours. It's work hard, really hard. It's warm up, work hard for 15 to 20 minutes, cool down, work sort of hard for another 10, 15, 20 minutes, and then cool down again. And I do that 5 or 6 days a week. It's usually 6 days a week unless I'm skiing on the weekends. And in terms of recovery, I'm kind of the athlete that's on the other end of the spectrum. I don't do a lot for recovery other than trying to take care of my nutrition, my mindset, and my sleeping. But in terms of all of the other stuff, the only things I'm really doing is I go for a kind of like a deep tissue athletic massage every other week. That's about it. I actually think that body work, like professional body work, you had an unlimited budget and availability to a pro. Of all the things you could do, that is the best one.
I am in 100% agreement there. It's a huge difference when I'm actually making that a priority versus, not.
Yeah. It's amazing on so many different levels, like from the physiological standpoint, what's happening with like the muscles and the tissue and all that stuff. But then also from, I think the most overlooked is we live such busy, chaotic, stressful lives, and it's giving you that 60 or 90 minutes to fall into that like parasympathetic nervous system, that like rest and digest in this meditative state and kind of like disconnect. And I almost think like that forced 60-minute meditation is as powerful as what you're getting from the physiological side of that hour or 90-minute massage.
So I want to follow up on this because what you're talking about there comes into a topic that comes up with a lot of people who we interview, which is the idea of balance. When you've got family, you mentioned you've got your workouts, you've got your family, you've got your business. How do you feel how do you feel about keeping that balance, balancing family, keeping that a priority while still maintaining everything else that you're doing?
So I think balance is individual. I don't think having a balanced life should be the objective of everybody. And I am shooting for balance in my life. I think balance is what is going to lead me to ultimate fulfillment and happiness, and being on my deathbed and looking back and being like, I'm so glad that worked out the way that I wanted to. But I know that's not the right path for everybody. Working with my elite athletes, they do not have balance in their lives at all. It is so tilted towards the performance and the career and the athletics and everything else. And most world-class achievers are that, whether it's Elon Musk or Steve Jobs or Michael Phelps or Kobe Bryant or Serena Williams or whoever it might be. These world-class performers do not have balance. So I think a big thing for people to, for me, it was that realization of like, what should I be chasing? Because to me, I think my biggest fear in life, it's not spiders, it's not heights, it's not death. It's for me that my biggest fear is spending time on things that ultimately are not going to matter. And that's what I'm trying to like find balance in my life. So what I've done, I'm very kind of systematic. I categorize my life in 5 different categories. I want to live, love, lead, learn, and leave a legacy. So my 5 L's. And from there, so this is how I find balance. From there, I have 5 kind of things I'm tracking in each of those categories. And I spent about 3 years every single day tracking how I was doing on those things. So for one of them, I want to love. So that has to do with my family. So I want to be present. I want to be around my family. So one of the things I was doing was every single day, no matter what during the week, I'm going to be home by 6 o'clock. It doesn't matter if I'm in the middle of a podcast or a meeting or a project. When the clock hits 5:35, I have to be walking out the door at work. And people around me know this now. It's like, it'll happen. And it's like, I'll just in the middle, the meeting will still be going on, and I'll just get up and leave, because to me, I want to make sure that that's a hard line. I'm a big believer in, drawing deep lines in the sand, having bright lines of knowing whether you're achieving it or not. Similar ones in that kind of love category is I call my mom and my dad, twice every week. It's things like when I go home at 6 o'clock, I plug my phone in upstairs and I'm not checking my phone. I don't bring my computer home. So when I'm home, I'm having, I'm connecting and I'm there. We have family dinner, which took us a long time to put into place. It's amazing how hard that is. But I think one of the things we were doing was we were waiting for perfect, and our kids are all over the place. We have an 18-year-old, a 14-year-old, a 6-year-old, and a 4-year-old. They're all busy, and we would wait till like, okay, not everyone's here. Let's not have the family dinner. And we just changed that. We were like, whoever is here, we are going to sit down and eat together. So we went from having, it's a little embarrassing, but probably maybe 2 family dinners a month to having probably 5 a week now. And it's been a kind of a game changer.
That's huge.
Like, I kind of have those different, like, call it principles or values, whatever you want to call it. And then performance metrics for each one of those things to make sure I'm living with balance, because that is what I am chasing. That is what I want. I want to be a great dad. I want to be a great husband. I want to be a great coach. I want to be a great business leader. I want to have my own hobbies and health. So I don't want to go so deep into one of those, which I think people very easily kind of justify in their lives. Like, okay, I'm starting a business. I'm going to go all in for 5 years, and then I'll sell the business, and then I'll pull back, and then I'll kick it with my family and, have a really great relationship with my kids. And I just don't, maybe it's because it's what I've seen. I don't see that happening. I see people busting it really hard, working really hard, but they let their health go. They let their relationships go. They let their friends go. And when they try and come back to it 5 or 10 years later, those things are gone. I use the analogy, imagine life is a game in which you're trying to juggle 5 different balls. And those balls are called work, family, health, faith, or whatever you want to call that, and whatever else it is, maybe like hobbies. What you realize is that as you're trying to juggle all of these balls, they're all made of glass. And if you drop one of them, they could get scuffed or cracked, or God forbid, they could get shattered and never get back to where they are. Except, my take on this, except for one of those. One of those balls you're juggling is actually made of rubber. And it's the only one that will actually bounce back, and that's work and career. If you have a major setback in work career, you can recover from that. But if you have a major setback in your health, you might not come back from that. If you have a major setback in relationship with your wife or your husband or your significant or your kids, you might not come back from that. So I always keep that in the back of my mind. Like, it's so easy for us to lean into careers or whatever it might be. I really think that that's the only one that is not as important as we've been told growing up in this society of, work hard, 65, retire and kick it.
I follow your wife on Instagram, by the way, Heather, and you two are beyond adorable. I love your relationship. Your relationship goals for me, the way you both speak about one another and how much you appreciate each other. Can you just talk about how you both met and how do you keep that relationship healthy and happy after all these years?
Well, first off, that's so nice. And anybody that follows my wife, she is a complete open book, like most people have never seen before. She has a blog. Her name is Heather, so it's Heather Bergeron, and she has a blog called hbunfiltered.com, and it is very raw and very unfiltered. So in this kind of like small public life that people live now, where everyone's on social media, she puts a lot of our lives out there. So I appreciate you saying that. It's very nice. We met. I was a personal trainer at a Globo gym, and she was, this is so cliche, it's almost, and she was an aerobics instructor. So we met.
Cute.
That's so cute.
Yeah. So we met at a gym, and then fast forward a few years later, and got married in 2009. We now have our small family, and in terms of the way that we try to have a strong relationship, it's I don't think there's any one thing. It's all, to me, it's like all the tiny things. And Heather writes about this, as I'm trying to figure out what I'm saying here, I'm just like, Heather would have such a better answer for this. Like, she writes about this all the time. She's so good with her words and so open about it. But I think it's all the small things. It's the way you look at people, and it's the tonality and the way you talk to people. It's the listening, not waiting for your turn to talk. And it's the making the time and the effort to make the other person feel incredibly valued. I kind of fall back on one of the early lessons I learned when I was kind of digging into personal relationships, and I was doing it for the coaching side of things, but just assume that the other person is trying really hard. And if something's not going well, it's your fault. So bring it back to you, and what can you do to show more love, to show more feeling, to show more empathy, to show more respect, to show more care, to spend more time. I think if you do that, then it gets reciprocated. I think what some people might be doing is kind of waiting. They're waiting for the other person to show love, to show respect, to show care, to show wants, to show desires. And if you play that, that's games. And we're just if there's one thing that our relationship doesn't have, it's games. We just I was so attracted to the fact that Heather makes me such a better person when I'm around her. I felt like more myself with her than I had ever felt with anybody else. And that's so empowering and such a turn on that it's like you want to reciprocate it back. And I think that's kind of creates this upward cycle as opposed to, the downward cycle that I think some relationships can find themselves in.
That's so sweet. I feel like we could have aired this around like Valentine's Day or something. Like, I'm like, aw, this is relationship advice. I know. So I think we want to be conscious of your time here. And I'm wondering, is there anything, we have covered like so many different things. Is there anything we haven't touched on that you would like to speak about?
I like talking about everything in terms of like fitness coaching and, I love the balance question, stuff like that. I would say, in terms of just like from your audience, if I was kind of, they're just people that are kind of like looking to get fit. And if you're trying to, or looking to get more in shape or live healthier lives, to me, it's like, it's not a matter of any one thing. It's how are you doing in a few major categories. And it's, what are you eating? So it's your nutrition. It's, what are you doing through your training? So it's you're working out. It's how is your sleep? It is how is your mindset? And then how are your relationships? So I call those the 5 factors. And it's, eat, sleep, train, mindset, and relationships. So if you go to the doctor, most doctors would basically say, okay, you need to get in better shape or we're going to have to put you some medication. This is what a good doctor would say. A bad doctor would just put you on medication. A good doctor would say, so I need you to eat better and exercise more. Well, I think that just gets there's a lot of variabilities in that. So, a big kind of like driving home thing for that, if I had to say one thing for eat better, it's get off of the processed foods. It's don't eat things that come in boxes or bags or have shelf life. I can dive down crazy rabbit holes and talk about, gut microbiome and blood levels and all the rest that we can kind of geek out about. And we do that with our athletes, and we do everything from, sweat tests and stool samples and blood testing to try and like fine tune it. But even at that super high level, a lot of it comes back to this really big picture thing of eat real food. And it's so important. In terms of training, it's what we already talked about. It's constantly varied, functional movements at relatively high intensity. So don't do the same thing every day, constantly varied. Functional movements, so make sure that these are things that you do in real life. So don't sit on a machine. The machine is not going to translate to the real world. Instead, grab some dumbbells. It doesn't matter how heavy they are. Grab some light dumbbells, or don't use weight at all, but do some squats and some push-ups and go for runs. And then from there, try and work at if you're reading while you're doing this, if you can hold a conversation while you're doing this, for most people, that's probably not enough intensity to elicit a response. So constantly varied functional movements at relatively high intensity. The sleep thing, it's super important. It matters a ton, and the easy part is to start with, if you're not getting 7 hours, you're in sleep deprivation. You're going to be you're getting worse. If you're at 7 to 8, you're holding strong. And for most people, if you're 8 plus, you're in a good place. After 9, it gets, this is hours. After 9 hours, it's kind of really individual whether there's any benefit at all. And then it becomes a quality thing. And just Google, improve sleep quality. You'll see things like blackout lights and white noise and sleeping between 62 and 68 degrees and certain pillows and positions and all the other stuff. The next one's mindset. We talked about it a little bit. If I just one quick thing, never whine, never complain, never make excuses, find out what you have control over and let everything else go. And then the last one actually is the biggest one, which is relationships. If you have a few, it doesn't have to be a lot, but super deep, meaningful relationships, not people that you talk about clothes with, that you talk about politics with, that you talk about what's on TV or those things, but you talk about your dreams, your hopes, your fears. You laugh with them, really deeply laugh with them, and you cry with them, and you share your passions. And if you have a few of those relationships where really lots of trust built in, that actually supersedes all the other four in terms of who lives the longest, healthiest lives. The people with the best, most deep, meaningful relationships, not in number, but in depth, live the longest, most productive, happy lives that are free of disease. So really, I know we touched on the relationship thing a little bit at the end there. If there's one place to kind of double down, it would be there.
Ben, could you tell our listeners where they can find you online and on social media? And if they're interested in working with you, is that an option?
Yep, sure. So a few different places. For our gym is CrossFitNewEngland.com. You can check out there. It's in Natick, Massachusetts. We have an online training platform for kind of people that are higher level athletes, but it's called CompTrain, C-O-M-P, Train, T-R-A-I-N, CompTrain.co. On myself, I'm on Instagram at Ben Bergeron. There's a website, benbergeron.com. And if people wanted to train and work with us, those are the two options. There's online, if you're not around, CompTrain.co. But if you're around here, we take athletes. And when I say athletes, we call everyone at our gym athletes. Anybody from any fitness level. We have people that are trying to lose 200 pounds and, get off diabetes medication, people coming back from cancer, and adaptive athletes that are missing limbs, to right up to, super elite athletes. Nobody is, one of my big pet peeves is when people say, I want to get in shape before I start CrossFit. That's what we're here to do, is to help people learn. That would be like saying, I want to learn to play guitar before I take lessons. It's like, it just doesn't really make sense. So we would love for people to come check us out, give us a call, send us an email, or reach out through social, and love to start a deep, meaningful, impactful relationship.
Well, we just have one more question, if that's okay. We ask this of everyone that appears on the show. Okay. So, Ben, what was the last song you listened to before you did this podcast interview?
I don't know the answer to that, because I'm in the gym all the time and there's music playing all the time, and I am not I don't hear music. So I don't know what it was. So people all the time are like, they'll be working on can you change the music? Can you turn it up? I love this song. I don't hear it. So I don't know the answer to that. I know fair. And the other, so it's so contrasting with my wife. My wife, Heather, can she hears a song and she can say the lyrics to every song she's heard. She knows them all. I couldn't tell you the lyrics to any song at all. I don't.
That's fair.
I don't hear them. It's really strange. I feel like it's whatever the opposite of superpower is.
Use your superpower.
It's my kryptonite.
Superpowers, your brain's used in other ways.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for appearing on the show today. It was fantastic talking to you.
Oh, I appreciate it, guys. Thank you.
Love this show? Tell us why in a 5-star review on iTunes, and we'll read it on the air. Also, make sure you are a subscriber. If you want to reach out to say hi or have a question about a recent episode, yay, well, feel free to email us at podcast@fitbottomgirls.com. And if this podcast jives perfectly with your brand, consider sponsoring the show. Get more info by emailing advertising@fitbottomgirls.com. Find all kinds of Fit Bottom goodness online and on social media at Fit Bottom Girls, Fit Bottom Mamas, Fit Bottom Eats, and Fit Bottom Zen. And if books and movies are your thing, check out the other podcast I co-host called Book versus Movie, which you can find anywhere where you search for podcasts. Thanks for listening.